I was in Winnipeg, and I went down and I called into the recruitment office, and I only went down to make an inquiry, and the chap asked me, well, what qualifications did I have that warranted my applying to join the Air Force? And I said, well, I do the Morse code. I learned the Morse code. And the reason I learned the Morse code, I wanted to be a station agent on the railways at home. And I had two uncles who were both station agents. And I knew to be qualified, I'd have to have the Morse code. So I learned the Morse code myself, actually, and that's how I knew it. When I said Morse code, poof, that's it, you're in. And that was it. And I was on my way then. And that was in August 1940, and then I had to go to a recruitment school, if you want to call it, to learn all the bits and pieces, and that was in Calgary, in Alberta, and that was in October 1940. And shortly after that, we were on our way over this country, and we come over here in October 1940. And it wasn't long after the Battle of Britain had taken place, just after that. And we were assigned then two different squadrons, of course, because there wasn't RCAF hadn't been formed up then. And we were sort of dismissed all around. We come over, about 14 of us come over as passengers, and all radio operators, and all keen to be air crew. That was the whole idea. Because the chap said, if you get into radio operating signal, go over there, and then you can get into air crew. So that was what we were all doing, the whole lot of us. And as I said, we were all assigned to different RAF stations, and I went up to 601 Squadron, and up in Yorkshire. And it was from there that I was posted then to up to Scotland, up to northern Scotland, right on the tip of Scotland, right up in Dunnet Bay. That's where we were stationed. And whilst there, I was seen by our WC, and he said, "Look, if you're wasting your time," he said, "because we've been waiting a year then for air crew. We had our medicals and still waiting and waiting, and I can remember, I think he was a squadron leader in charge of our whole effort up there, and he said, look, you've got to make your minds up, not only to myself but to my friends. He said, you've got to make up your minds whether you're going to continue waiting for air crew or going to something else." So we were all wireless mechs at that time, and so I with myself, right, I said, I'll change, I'll go into a wire mech. So I was a wireless mech, and so I was posted down to Cranwell. Went on a course down in Cranwell, and from there we went to our squadron, Canadian squadron was formed up in Lincolnshire. And we went from Lincolnshire then to Fairwood Common. That was when our squadron was being formed up. And at that time we had a mixture of RAF and RCAF, and it was a first-class working scheme. Well, when we went to Fairwood Common, Richard, it was just a new airfield, all had been built up, and virtually we got used to the squadron because it just been formed up, and we used to go then every so often we'd go and relieve squadrons all around this country, and places which I've since learned, I said, oh, we were there, but at the time I didn't know it was what it was or where it was, to be quite honest with you. And then we'd come back to Fairwood Common. This is why Fairwood Common was more or less our home base. And apart from just a session down in West Wales, we were always stationed at Fairwood Common. A bus took us from Fairwood into Swansea. And some of the boys went to the pubs and others went dancing, whatever. And one of our favorite spots was the Patty Pavilion, and all the boys used to go there, jitterbugging and gorgeous. That was going on all the time, and that's where I met my wife. Yes. And we were married then, December '42, and shortly after that, I was posted back home to Canada. Just as quick as that. I had to find the boys after our night out and bring them back up to Fairwood Common. And I walked from High Street Station to Fairwood Common several times with a couple of them in tow, you know, the worse the drink, a little bit the worse for the drink they'd had. Our station commander, there were two brothers. I'm just trying to remember their names now offhand, but the discipline was quite loose on the camp. There wasn't anything hearty, and we had excellent food. The food was excellent. Nobody would go out for tea. We'd stay in and have tea, whereas before in other stations we'd go out and have tea. But Fairwood Common, it was excellent food, really excellent. Yes, I fitted these communication radios to Spitfires, and they were fitted in behind the pilot's seat, which is a very, very awkward spot to get to. But fortunately, I appreciate the fact I wasn't a big fellow, so I could get in behind and do it, but it was always a very, very awkward job to do. And apart from that, I was in charge of the section, and we also had electricians in our section as well, and they had electrical work to do, and we sort of worked together on all that basis. And one of the things I had to do every day was to calibrate these radios to the change in the daily signal. And it was very, very hush-hush. I used to get the information come down in the morning, and then I had two calibrators I had to carry around into each aircraft. I had to calibrate the radio to the signal for the day. That was all very, very secretive. And and I was in charge of the section, and I was the only one who was allowed to do this. Nobody else was allowed to do it. First thing I think I bought when I came over to this country was a bicycle. And my friend of mine and ourselves, we went down to this bicycle shop. This was in Thornaby in Yorkshire. And we each bought a bicycle, an Armstrong it was called. Supposed to be the best. It cost us £9 at that particular time. And wherever I went, I always took my bicycle with me. And one of the assets, well, a big asset was my bicycle when I was in Fairwood, because I had to go around to the whole of the dispersal, the whole of the airfield, and I used to put these two big calibrators on my shoulders and ride my bike, and away I'd go. And it was only because that had saved a lot of time, a lot of footwork, but my bike was very, very important. Wherever I went on holidays or breaks and our leaves, I always took my bike with me, and I cycled all over the country. Cycled all over the Lakes District, because our padre and our squadron come from just Coniston Water, and they had a lovely home up there, and I spent a lovely leave up there for 2 weeks, just cycling around the Lakes District. It was remarkable. We had bullfighters, a squadron of bullfighters. I think they're Polish. And waking up one morning, and one was parked up and crashed right outside our billet, and I didn't even hear it. But both fighters had a tendency to pull off to the left. They had this tendency, taking off, pull off to the left. And apparently this is what happened to this bullfighter. He pulled right off the fairway, and he's right outside our window, crumpled up. No fire or anything, but just crashed there. Whilst we were all out working on the dispersals, doing whatnot, and we had an aircraft crash into our dispersal hut. And unfortunately, there was nobody there. It was all brickwork, and it was completely demolished. And I always remember that we were all out. One of us that had been in there could have been killed. And our hut, or our workshop, was in the north side of Fairwood Common, quite a well away from everything. And we had how many? What do we had? One, two, but had about 2 runways there. And we were sort of stationed at the far end of the Fairwood. So we had them all done up nice and comfortable, Richard. And we slept there. We did everything there in our workshop. We had our own sleeping accommodation. And we were something of an unknown quantity at that time because we were signals and nobody knew exactly what we did, so far as that's concerned, up to a point. So, but we were sort of left alone, and we had our own transport. We had our own little van, and I used to drive the van. And just an incident when when our squadron first arrived in Fairwood, I was in charge of signals, and I was approached by the transport division saying, "Look, we got a van, and you got to drive it." And I hadn't driven anything before in my life prior to coming there, and he was told me that this was you, and he taught me how to declutch, pushing in and declutching, and after that I had to drive it. But I had no problems. We used to go all over the country. And we put our best blues in our van and our bikes and whatnot, and we were quite independent in as far as the unit was concerned, and we'd transport ourselves wherever we went. We used to do sweeps, and I remember a couple of times having scrambles, and on just one case, we weren't appreciative of the fact, but at that time we used to have aircraft flying in that area from Jerry coming over, and a couple of scrambles in that occasion. And one case, we had one of the pilots flying up on a sweep, and he looked across and he was flying right beside another Jerry. The two of them were flying together, more or less, and they both took off and broke off in that. But there was a big excitement that time when the pilot came back and he said, "He's flying beside a Jerry." It was quite a new experience because the majority of the pilots were all comparatively new. Young people just coming over to this country, and probably their first, more or less, flights involved in that sort of thing was at Fairwood. But other than that, no, we were a rest squadron. We used to go here and go there, but do sweeps over the, I expect over the channel from Swansea, because it's amazing. You're not thinking about 10 or 12 miles. You're sweeps right over in that area. They're all organized, of course. One of my very close friends was Joe Axe, and he lived in Somerset. And Joe and I used to go everywhere. Remember, we come up to, one Sunday you invited us up to tea, and Joe and I both went up, and we couldn't find the place. We went up there on our bikes, so we went back home and back to the billets, and I saw Enid then the following week in the paddy. She said, "Where were you last Sunday?" And I said, "Well, we couldn't find the place." So she gave us other instructions, and we went up there and we had tea. That was the first time. So the people over the whole of the country, no matter where we went, when we first went to right in this country, we went to Thornaby on Yorkshire. And that's where the airport was. The people there to put themselves out to invite you, and we used to think, look, we're having their rations. But if you didn't go up, they'd come up to the airport and say, "Where were you?" And we met friends there who every Christmas we'd have a Christmas card, and that went on for years and years, up until a matter about 6 or 7 years ago, and I hadn't seen Jimmy since I left to go back to Canada, and he was in the RAF in Thornaby, and one day I had I think it was a letter inviting us up to Thornaby to their golden wedding anniversary. So we went up there, we drove up there, and the first time I'd seen Jimmy since I left years and years ago. It was a marvelous experience, But every Christmas, from that time right all the way through all the years, we'd have a Christmas card from Jimmy and Elsie. Marvelous. At that particular, it was a very enjoyable time of my life. In spite of what went on, it was a very, very important and enjoyable time of my life.